Hello everyone, my name is Carson Tang, and I did my journal club presentation on smoking, a leading factor for the death of chronic respiratory diseases derived from Global Burden of Disease Study 2019. And so for background in physiology, the main focus of the study was on the respiratory system, and the importance of the study was to discover what has been kind of the leading cause of chronic respiratory diseases, or CRDS for short, and finding trends of CRDS in different economic areas or sex. And the relationship to the class is just studying like how the harm of pollution, smoke, and particulates kind of harm the lungs and respiratory system as a whole. And so the main question that was asked in the study was there any differences in incidences, deaths, age standardized incidence rate, or ASIR for short, and age standardized death rate, ASDR for short, of CRDS in 204 countries and regions based on specific geographical areas and gender. And the relevance of the study is to measure if there are areas with different economic factors around the world that are more affected by CRDS. And does being male or female make you more susceptible to being affected by CRDS? And what other risk factors contribute the most to CRDS? And so, the main test subject, or I should say the only test subject of the study, was humans, and the study was conducted using data from GHDX, or the Global Health Data Exchange website, which provides a comparative assessment of health loss from 369 diseases across 204 countries and territories spanning from 1990 to 2019. And the countries were categorized based on Social Demographic Index, SDI, which is basically based on income per capita, average years of education among people over the age of 15, and the total fertility rate. And SDIs that were measured with a high, middle, low, and low levels. And so, incidence, death, ASIR, ASDR, risk factors, and estimated annual percentage change of CRDS from 1990s to 2019 was measured and reported. And so, for the results, this is figure 1. And so, in the graph here, 4 chronic respiratory diseases were plotted on a graph based on their ASIR and ASDR, and the figure shows that for the ASIR, asthma had the highest respiratory disease from 1990 to 2019, which means it had the highest amount of cases and has been a leading factor in reduced respiratory health. And so for ASDR, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease had the highest, which means it had the most deaths among the chronic respiratory diseases of the 4. And so for figure 2, it presents multiple risks that contribute to CRDS, and the top 4 risks in 2019 have not changed since 1990. And this consists of smoking, particulate matter pollution, occupational particulate matter gases and fumes, and low temperature. And so smoking was the highest, and it still is the highest risk factor that contributes to CRDS. And kind of the significance of all this figure is to show that all these factors contribute to the decline in lung health, with factors causing increasing damage to lungs over time, and which makes oxygen exchange in the lungs more difficult, which overall makes it hard for individuals to breathe that are affected by these risk factors. And so the key findings of the experiment include that the ASIR and ASDR of CRDS were much more larger in males than females, and the study hypothesized that because males are much more sicker and respond poorly to treatment, that's why they're more susceptible to those 2 factors. Also, ASIR was the highest in high SDI regions, while ASDR was highest in the low SDI. And the level of SDI is directly associated with population health and disparity between the rich and poor, because in more affluent areas, they have more access to healthcare, which makes it easier to kind of report certain sicknesses and illnesses, and they also have a much more cleaner environment. Whereas in poorer areas, they're more affected by pollution, which kind of directly causes more of an increased death rate in those areas. Also, smoking was the leading cause of death of CRDS, followed by PM pollution, or particulate matter pollution. And CRDS mainly consisted of 4 diseases, which consist of asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD for short, pneumonia, and ILD, and pulmonary sarcoidosis. And between the 4, asthma had the highest ASIR, and COPD had the highest ASDR. And so these results kind of tell us that the respiratory system is greatly affected by our environment, and pollutants in the air significantly harm our lungs. Economic factors also impact our environment and what we breathe in, and males are more likely to suffer from CRDS. And this relates to the class because these factors greatly impact the health of our respiratory system. And so, for the study, I've kind of noticed two main weaknesses that are associated with this, and I feel that they rely too heavily on online sources because most of their research and data came from the GHRDX website. And I felt that the study was much too broad, where they had included too many factors in, and it kind of like overcomplicated everything. So what I think could be improved on for future research is surveying a smaller area, and so where was two smaller areas, I should say, where one had a high SDI and one has a low SDI, and they can compare the two areas on factors that contribute to the chronic respiratory diseases as well. And this is my reference.